Okay, new series. So you can use diminished chords for all kinds of things, but one of the best things you can do with a diminished chord is just create and play and enjoy the fact that you can make sound at any instrument. So I'd like to show you how to get started playing diminished and unravel some of the secrets and some of the mysteries so that you could do more with them if you'd like, or you could just stay simple and be beautiful while no one's looking. Here we go. We're going to start with a C diminished triad. Triad is 3 notes. Here's our diminished triad. This is a C diminished triad. It's diminished because it's not major, it's actually diminished. It's not minor, it's diminished. It's been shrunk, it's small. All of it has been diminished except the root, or we wouldn't have a C. So the C is now diminished because we're going to take the top note and the middle note and lower them a half step. Now this is diminished. Okay, and then we're going to add another minor third to this and make it a diminished 7th chord. And there it is. Okay, it's a fully diminished 7th. Fully diminished chords are, of course, all minor thirds. Intervals are discussed all over the internet, and I'll get to them as well. But for now, the interval is another word of distance. The distance between these is a minor third. If we have a C major 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, if we flat the 7, we have a flatted 7, but we don't have a fully diminished chord when we put those other notes in. We have a half diminished. It's half diminished because in order for it to be fully diminished, it needs symmetrical minor thirds. That means we have to double flat the 7th. Now, this is all long-winded theory that you need to learn for one moment only. Now that you've learned that, you may never need it again. But there it is. Diminished has a double flatted 7th. It's not major 7. It's not a flat 7. This is a half diminished chord. It is fully diminished, which is a double flatted 7th. This gives us minor thirds, all minor thirds. And there's the root. Okay, so now we have C diminished. And the first thing we want to do is discover a scale that goes with diminished chords of all kinds, diminished triads. When it's a diminished chord, it gets a scale called a whole step, half step symmetrical scale. So what I mean is we build a scale using whole steps and half steps. Whole, half, whole, half. Another whole step and another half step and then a whole step. And then we're back to the beginning. So it has a really nice sound. Whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half. And we could keep going. A C diminished with the whole half scale. Okay, the really wonderful thing about diminished is it also has 3 other diminished chords in it. Let's find them. C diminished. Okay, the next diminished chord in this grouping, although you could say it's a first inversion, C diminished, it's actually an E flat diminished 7th. So, as we said before, diminished chords get a whole half scale, whole step, half step, symmetrical scale. So we take our E flat, and if we go a whole step above E flat, we're going to be here, then half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, back to E flat. And you might have already noticed it's the same as for C. So then that means our next diminished chord is a F sharp diminished. And again, you can build the scale to C, whole step, half step, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half. It's a real pretty scale. And our last diminished chord, we had C, then we had E flat diminished, could be called D sharp diminished, because that's also a D sharp. And then F sharp diminished. And our last one is A. And you can see this here. Again, the symmetrical diminished scale. A, whole half, diminished. Whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half. So, you've learned 4 scales and 4 different diminished chords. This is why sometimes in chord charts, music, sheet music, somewhere in the song they say it's an E flat diminished, and then somewhere else in the song they say it's an A diminished. But you're thinking it sounds the same, it's the same chord, why are they 2 different diminished? Well, that's why. And a lot of times the people doing the sheet music aren't paying attention to what they called it the last time. So it technically is all one thing. If you can learn these chords and attach them to each one of these roots, then you basically learned 1 diminished chord with 4 different names. C diminished 7, E flat diminished, E flat diminished 7, F sharp diminished, F sharp diminished 7, and A diminished 7. One scale for all of those chords. So I'm going to play my E flat diminished 7, and I need a scale to write with or to improvise with. I'm going to use my E flat whole half diminished. Now I'm going to play a C diminished, and I'm going to improvise or compose with my C whole half diminished scale. but I think I'll get creative and start on E flat. And maybe I'll be creative and I'll start on F sharp. Okay, so the little break in the sequence there was simply because the phone rang and I wanted to wait till the answering machine got it. So we're back now with our C diminished, A diminished, E flat diminished, F sharp diminished, all of the above. All 4 names, 1 sound, and that's what I'd like you to think about, is you train your ear. Depending on the song, your hand might have to be in a different place to play these. But it's all basically the same thing. So if you can learn that and learn the scale, if you're talking about improvising, you might not learn the scale from root to root. You might learn it more as a 5-finger movement. So to improvise, we can use the notes in the scale in a 5-finger thought process. So you're training your hand. Now this is the advantage of playing scales, major scales, minor scales, is that instead of having to play every scale from root to root, I'm going to do this again. To get a fingering that's like maybe a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. Now I have to get back to 1. Now I'm running out of fingers. So what I did with my diminished scales and studies is I would try to just move in 4 and 5-finger patterns on the same scale, so I could use it for any chord or any sound source within those 4. But I wasn't trapped to a, so to speak, root-to-root scale like sometimes happens with major scales or jazz scales. So here I'm thinking maybe 1 2 3. I might create exercises like this way. Oh, I'm doing that same scale again. So I might create an exercise like this. There's one that has me using kind of a traditional fingering, but I don't have the C. But you'll notice I went from thumb to 4. Now I'm just going to go this way. 3 2 1 2 3 2 4 1 2 1 3 4. This is a random or arbitrary fingering. And that was a mistake. So you can see I'm going, here I just went this way. This is what happens if you really know the scale, and that's what I'm suggesting. Get to know the scale. Now this goes this way. I have to get my fingers to shift so I can keep moving. There is a way to improvise and create like I'm doing right now, where you discover the terrain and you train your ear. But then you don't end up with the patterns that you always hear in jazz music or other types of music, where you'll hear actually predictable patterns, and those are nice and pretty, but you you don't get to really improvise when you're playing and regurgitating patterns. You're kind of trapped in them. So to improvise and create, you want to be able to have the knowledge of the terrain and your ear and use the different sounds to your advantage or your desire. So this is a lot of the scale as opposed to just the chord.